Christmas, everybody. Ellie here for WhoCulture, and we had a Doctor Who Christmas special. Doctor Who is back on Christmas Day. I cannot tell you how amazing it felt to gather around with my family and watch a Christmas special of Doctor Who on Christmas Day. It feels like it's been so long. It was such a big part of my childhood, and it just feels amazing. And the episode did not disappoint. I really enjoyed the episode. But without giving any spoilers away, I'm just going to get straight into the review. So here are the ups and downs for the church on Ruby Road. So we'll start with an up for that opening sequence. Everything about that whole opening moment just felt so magical and fairy tale-like. First and foremost, I love Carol of the Bells. So the moment I hear Carol of the Bells in anything, I'm like, yes, this is going to be great. But you mix that kind of very dramatic but mystical Christmas carol with the voiceover of the Doctor telling a fairy tale-like story with the snow and the church and this mystery of Ruby. I just really loved it. I think it felt brilliant. And following on from that, another up for the whole episode is it had a very Christmassy feel to it. Sometimes the Christmas specials don't quite hit that. If you think of The Return of Dr. Mysterio or even Voyage of the Damned, yes, they are Christmas specials, but they don't feel inherently Christmassy necessarily. But this one, you know, there were lots of Christmas songs. It revolved around Ruby's birthday being on Christmas Eve. There was the church, there was the snow, there was just a real Christmassy vibe to the whole story. Even the goblins and the child and the baby and everything about it, it just had this kind of fantastical element to it that felt very Christmassy. So that was definitely an up for me. Okay, so then we have the title sequence, the opening title sequence, and then we see Ruby now grown up at almost 19 years old. And another up is the way in which we had this TV show interview happening with Davina McCall. But the reason it gets an up here is it's very much a scene of exposition. We learn pretty much everything that's happened between Ruby being left in the previous scene to her now at almost 19 years old. But sometimes when you have a scene of exposition, it feels a little out of place and you question, why am I being fed all this information? It feels very strange for this character to be just randomly saying all of this. But because they laid it out as an interview on TV about the mystery of Ruby's life, it didn't feel out of place. There was a very, very valid reason for why she was telling her life story. And so I really found that a clever way for the audience to learn about Ruby without it feeling like a forced scene of exposition. Having said that, I do have a down. It's not an awful down, you know, but Davina, I think you should stick to presenting because I wasn't so keen on Davina McCall's acting. We'll let it pass. She was there as Davina McCall. It just felt a little bit like she was being fed lines and it didn't feel as natural to her as the presenting side did. But we'll let it slide. My next up here, and it's a very good one, revolves around the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa. We've seen him obviously previously in The Giggle, but this is where we're seeing Ncuti Gatwa on his own, man in the fore as the Doctor. And what I really love here is we're basically seeing the Doctor loving life in the club. He's living his best life, dancing and just having fun. And I think this is really great because we need to remember that this is a Doctor who is now free of those previous burdens. Because of the bi-generation and because of how that happened and the timey-wiminess of it, this Doctor is liberated of those burdens and guilts. And so to see him really enjoying himself here is wonderful. To see him just embracing that freedom, which I really love. And I think knowing that this is the direction that they were going with this version of the Doctor, now you can really see why Ncuti Gatwa was cast in the role, because he just embodies that energy and happiness and joy. I think if you previously thought about the Doctor and that kind of heavy burden that he did carry or she did carry, maybe before I knew that this was the direction the character was going in, I questioned why Ncuti Gatwa was the casting choice. Not because I don't think he's a brilliant actor, but because he's so full of life and energy. But now that we know that this Doctor is all about that, I think he was brilliant. Throughout the whole episode, he carried the technobabble well. Everything about him, I'm really enjoying so far. So yes, for Ncuti Gatwa. So carrying on from that, my next up is the scene that follows the club scene, the snowman scene. I really, really loved the dialogue of the Doctor here. You know, that kind of snappy wittiness of the Doctor. You know, he's talking to the police officer, name, the Doctor, occupation, not a doctor, address, that blue box over there. I like that. It was brilliant. I did read after the episode aired that this particular scene was added very late in the game as a result of Disney testing it with a test audience and then wanting us to see the Doctor sooner. I agree with that, and I'm really glad that this scene was added. I know there's been a lot of concern and worry about Disney's involvement, but actually, if this is the kind of thing that Disney push for, I'm all for it. Because I was actually thinking for a little while, we haven't seen much of the Doctor yet. And considering that it's, his debut, well, not technically not his debut, but you know what I mean. I feel like we haven't seen much of him yet. And that scene, I feel like, was the first time we really got to grips with this new Doctor. So if this is the kind of influence that Disney is having, I'm all for it. Okay, so following this scene, we have the introduction of Mrs. Flood, but I'm going to get back to her in a little while. So we'll just put a pin in her for now, and we meet Carla and Cherry. So, my next up, Cherry Sunday, is just a brilliant character. She's funny, she has that kind of Jackie Tyler vibe to her, where she can give out this kind of sarcasm, and she has the very witty lines. She just was a really great character, and I kind of hope that we see a little bit more of her. She just brought something to the episode that I feel like without her, there could have been a few scenes that could have been a little, not dull, but she just brought that extra humour to these scenes that could be quite serious and dark at times. So obviously then we have the arrival of Lulu Bell. I love the little joke about Lulu Bell being an awful name, because yes, it really is. And then of course later on the Doctor thinking it's a great name, because of course he does. So that was really, I liked that little kind of twist on the name of Lulu Bell and who thinks it's great and who thinks it's not. So then Carla disappears and the goblins come for the baby. We do have a down. Yes, picking up the photo of the goblin kind of makes you go, oh, what the hell's got the baby? But it just felt a bit like, why did the goblin take a photo? I know they're kind of mischievous and naughty. It just seemed a little bit like, you've got your job, take the baby. Why have you suddenly stopped to take a photo and then leave the photo behind? It's like, I don't know. Is it a very small down? Is it a little bit of a petty down? Yes, but this is our job, so why did the goblin take the photo? But we'll move on. We do have another up though, because then we have the scene that we had previously been shown. It had been released already, the snippet of Ruby on the ladder and the Doctor running across the rooftops to question why she thought it was a good idea to jump onto this ladder. This was a brilliant scene. I did have concerns that, oh, here we go, now we're going to have some kind of iffy CGI. And don't get me wrong, I know I've said plenty of times, to a degree, iffy CGI is fine by me. But sometimes it's going to be like, oh, is this going to look really, really green screened? And I was very pleasantly surprised, because it really didn't. I wasn't distracted at all by it. I firmly believe they were hanging on a ladder from the sky. It was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. And I really loved the dialogue between the Doctor and Ruby. I mean, this is really, yes, they had met briefly beforehand, but this was the kind of first encounter, that typical Doctor companion banter of, why have you done that? I don't know. What's going on? You're so silly. So then let's move on to another up, which is the chemistry between Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson. Banter and bickering between the Doctor and the companion is a really important element of that relationship. I mean, personally, the Doctor and Donna are really my favourite Doctor companion duo. And I think a lot of that is because of the comedy in that, because of the banter between them. I'm really glad to see that the chemistry and the banter between these two is very much there, pretty much straight away. And I'm very excited to see where this relationship goes between these two characters. So we're still on the ladder, and I have another up, a whopping up. Murray Gold. I think I up Murray Gold in pretty much every single review that I do. With good reason. His music is brilliant. It just elevates any scene, particularly in this scene. You know, it's building up. We've heard the 15th Doctor's theme previously in The Giggle, but we start to have it building up here. That's what I like about the 15th Doctor's theme, is it kind of builds up. But the moment that he uses his intelligent glove, one-handed, holds onto the ladder and swings off and is floating there, the CGI, the visual effects still didn't look iffy at all. I firmly believed he was hanging from a ladder in the sky. It looked brilliant, but the music kind of just hit then, and it built up, and it gave me goosebumps, you know? It just felt very dramatic and just very Doctor Who. And Murray Gold, I just love your music. Never, ever, ever leave ever again, please. So then that does lead me to another up. I did previously just mention it, the intelligent gloves. What I love about the intelligent gloves is that when you look at them, they are very much a pair of ordinary gloves with some LED lights stuck to them. But that to me is Doctor Who. Just stick some LED lights on a glove and tell me that they're magical, and I will believe it. And I think that they were good because they did something kind of wacky and helpful to the story, but they were a device that kind of were purposely for that, as opposed to, as I've mentioned before, I didn't like that the Sonic suddenly had all these super duper powers that we saw in the Star Beast. So I like that they were just randomly, here, I have some super gloves in my pocket and they're going to save the day. And I thought that was funny. I like that. That's what Doctor Who is. Take something ordinary, stick some lights on it, and suddenly it's the most powerful and great invention ever made. Still on the ladder. We're on the ladder for a while. Just another quick up. The Mavity joke, the Mavity gag is still very much there. They are sticking with Mavity, and I'm glad they are, because if they'd just done it and then ignored it, it would have seemed like the most pointless scene in the world, and I like that the gag is being stuck with. It made me chuckle. The only part of this scene that I do have a down for, despite the fact that I just said that most of the dialogue between these two characters was great, there was one line that the Doctor said that made me kind of feel, really? And it's the line when he says, do you know why they call them goblins? Because they like to gobble you up. It just felt a bit cheesy. And I know Doctor Who is cheesy, it just felt a little bit too cheesy, in my opinion. So then we go through the clouds, and we see the Goblin's ship in the sky. Having up here, the visual effects in this entire episode were brilliant. I don't think at any point I was distracted by the visual effects in any way. I think they were done really cleverly. I just think throughout this whole episode, the visual effects were very, very good. And I know I've commented before how I don't mind if they look a bit iffy here and there, and sometimes I do find it distracting when they're kind of too polished. But yeah, in this episode, I think they found the balance quite right, and I wasn't distracted by them at all. I just kind of believed what I was seeing, so I think that was really well done. Another up. Everything about this scene where they're tied up and the realization of the Doctor and this idea of the language of luck and coincidence and luck being very, very relevant. Now, we have kind of seen this idea of kind of whimsical, fantastical elements extending into the laws of the world. Obviously with the toy maker and this idea of invoking superstition at the edge of the galaxy or the edge of creation or whatever it was. I know I said the wrong thing in a video a little while ago and everyone picked me up on it. But I think this is something that we're going to see more of in the upcoming seasons. This idea of fantasy. And I really, really like that. The thing is with Doctor Who is they've always tried to give an explanation to fantastical and mystical things. Ghosts don't exist, they are some sort of alien species. You know, vampires aren't really vampires. But what I like here is I feel like we are bordering into actually a realm of Doctor Who where the fantastical and the whimsical and the magical are actually becoming real without some sort of sci-fi explanation, and I kind of like that. And yeah, this idea of superstition and coincidence. I just really and the dialogue itself, you know, the language of luck. I wrote that down, just that line, because I loved it. I thought it was really brilliant. So the writing in particular as well for this has been very beautiful. Another funny up here is the Doctor getting offended by Ruby calling the goblins time travelers. The whole scene, that whole kind of section there, it did give me major Eric vibes, and I know I have previously said that I was concerned that I was going to struggle to see Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor and not Eric from Sex Education. And to be honest, I hadn't struggled with that. I was pleasantly surprised. I've really envisioned, he's the Doctor. He really does, just embodies the role very, very well. That one moment, the way he was like, excuse me, it very much was like Eric, but it was fine. I enjoyed it. I really liked that moment. Now I have an up and a down here for the Sonic. I like that it's stopped being this super duper Sonic that can do everything and build shields and block bullets because it can't open the doors. I like that we've stepped away from the Sonic being this massively it can do anything device like it was in the Star Beast. And I did speak about that in the Star Beast review, so I won't go into it too much, but I like that we've kind of gone back to a little simpler Sonic screwdriver. Having said that, I really don't like the design. It doesn't look like a sonic screwdriver. I'm all for updating it and making it look cool, but surely the idea of the screwdriver is that it should, at the end, still look like a screwdriver in some way. But this just looks like some sort of dodgy TV remote. It just doesn't look like a screwdriver. And it can do all the whistles and bells and all the cool things, and I do really love that it's got the Gallifreyan symbols of the Rwandan proverb. I like that. I just don't like the overall shape and size of it. It's not the one for me, I'm afraid. But let's move on to another up here, because I don't want to keep going to the downs. Let's go to an up. The Goblin Song. The Goblin Song has been stuck in my head ever since it was released. It's brilliant. I love it. It's so great. There's not much more I can say about it. You've got Janice just giving it her all. I love the beat of it. It's very catchy. It's very dark if you actually listen to the lyrics, but I think it's brilliant. I really, really, really enjoy the Goblin Song. A bonus up has to be when Ruby goes, "They're seasoning her." My whole family laughed. So I think that deserves an up just for the reaction of just my household. That was a brilliant line. Then another up, following that, we have the Doctor and Ruby singing as well. Now I know that it's a very divided thing, musical episodes, especially in sci-fi. I know that Star Trek have recently done it and it was very mixed in terms of the reactions were very mixed to that episode. Here, I think they did really, really well. Don't get me wrong, I personally would still love to see a Doctor Who episode that is fully a musical with some sort of like reason why they are all singing and dancing. I like that they did it here. It worked for the scene. It kind of gave us this new idea of who this Doctor is. He's got the confidence to just start singing as a distraction. There was enough of it to kind of go, they're singing, but for those who don't enjoy musicals, it was over quick enough for them to go, oh, thank God for that. They weren't going to sing for the whole episode after that. It was a good distraction. The lines, the lyrics were funny, and I thought it was pretty clever. Overall, I think it worked quite well. The next part that I really, really enjoyed, my next up, the parallels that were drawn between Ruby being adopted, being a foundling, and the Doctor then acknowledging that he also is a foundling, is adopted. I know I've been saying this a lot because obviously it has been acknowledged in the last few episodes. We have had more acknowledgement and exploration of the Timeless Child in the previous 4 Russell T Davies episodes than we did in the episode that we were actually introduced to this whole concept in the first place. If he's going to explore it in a way that makes it seem really amazing, go for it. That's what we needed. I think the issue people took with it is it was introduced and never went anywhere. But Russell T Davies seems to be taking it somewhere. But what I really enjoy about it is the way he's going with it is not necessarily about what the thing is in itself. His exploration of it is how it's affecting the Doctor, how it emotionally affects the Doctor, how it's mentally affecting the Doctor. And I really like that. And I also like that, obviously I mentioned earlier that this is the Doctor free of burden and liberated from that guilt. But he does still have, questions, and he's worked on those things that were weighing him down, but that doesn't mean that he's completely lacking in any sort of darkness at all. And we can tell from this moment that the Doctor still is struggling with this idea of not knowing who they actually are. And I kind of do hope, now that we've seen a bit of this exploration, that we do find out a bit more about the Timeless Child, because I think Russell T Davies would do it justice. The next part that genuinely I was quite shocked by and really on the edge of my seat, my next up, the twist. The twist that all of a sudden, time is altered and Ruby ceases to exist. Now, I will say that as I was making notes, in real time, I wrote, it's taken them a long time to realise that Ruby's missing, because I immediately went, where's Ruby? And you've got her adoptive mother and the guy who's just been hanging off of a ladder with her, and not one of them. And immediately you'd go, where's the other person that was just stood here a second ago? And I was thinking, oh, I've found her down. And then it dropped that they didn't even know who Ruby was. And I thought it was brilliant, that whole concept. I really love complicated time travel stories. If you haven't seen 12 Monkeys and you are a big fan of complicated time travel stories, I would highly recommend the 12 Monkeys TV series. It's brilliant. Not the point, Ellie. I love complicated time travel, and so when this happened, I was like, oh, this is getting juicy now. And what I really loved is that this whole scene where the photos disappear, Carla's whole personality changes, Cherry's whole personality changes. It really emphasises the significance and importance of Ruby, particularly in these two people's lives. Without dwelling too much on it, but just by the removal of one character, two people were completely different. And I thought that was really, really clever. And I think we obviously will come back to the relevance of Ruby's importance further on in the story. I don't think we're done with that yet. But I thought that twist was really, really great and kind of unexpected. Because I was thinking to myself, everything seems to be resolved. They've saved the baby, but I don't feel like the episode's anywhere near over yet. And then that happened, and it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. So then the Doctor hops in the TARDIS, travels back in time to go and save baby Ruby. Brilliant scene. I think it was great using the gloves to kind of pull the ship down, but the whopping up for this whole sequence is that the Goblin King is completely hot fuzzed. Now, if you haven't seen Hot Fuzz, you're not going to know what I'm talking about, but literally as it happened, my whole family has seen that film and we all went, it just got hot fuzzed. The scene I'm talking about is the scene in which Timothy Dalton's character in Hot Fuzz falls onto a model church, and the steeple, is that what it's called? The pointy bit on the church goes straight through his mouth, which is pretty much exactly what happens to the Goblin King. And I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like Hot Fuzz. It wasn't as graphic as Hot Fuzz, I will say. But I thought it was great. It was a little bit kind of silly. I enjoyed it. It was good. So then my other up is this mystery surrounding Ruby's mother. I will admit that I was slightly frustrated that the Doctor didn't chase after her. Why are you not chasing after her? She's right there. I think a lot of people probably said that. Also, she walked very slow. She was already walking away when the Doctor arrived, and he saved a baby, pulled a whole ship from the sky, and she was still walking away when he got back to the TARDIS after doing all of that. But I like the mystery surrounding the mother. I don't think that's going to be the end of that. And I think Russell T Davies is very capable of dragging out a mystery, but in the perfect way, in the best way. Sometimes a mystery can be dragged out in a way that you're like, come on now, come on. But I think Russell T Davies can be trusted to drop hints and little snippets here and there, and I think this will be a really good payoff in the end, whoever this turns out to be. Let the speculation begin. So then we kind of come towards the end of the episode. I will say that there is another down, and it just feels like we didn't really have like a defining moment for 15. You know, if you think of 11 and that basically run moment, or even just that stare that we see from Peter Capaldi, there wasn't really a moment in this episode that I immediately went, that's going to be your defining Doctor moment. He was brilliant, don't get me wrong, throughout the entire episode, but I feel like we could have done with maybe one more kind of deeply emotional scene, or one more speech, or one more moment of total badassery that just defined this moment as I am the Doctor. Maybe some sort of line delivered to the Goblin King. I don't know, I just feel like there was something missing in as much as we needed that defining Doctor moment, and it was lacking slightly. Now, don't get me wrong, I think we'll probably have plenty of them throughout this upcoming season. I just feel like for this introduction, even the arrival, if you think of David Tennant stepping out of that TARDIS in the Christmas Invasion, he didn't even say anything, he just walked out of the TARDIS in his pyjamas, and it just felt like this is the Doctor, and I just don't know that we were kind of softly introduced to the Doctor in this episode. He was just kind of there in the background until he was suddenly more relevant to the story. But yeah, I just feel like, and also something else that was missing, we've seen some wonderful costumes so far already on this Doctor. We didn't have a moment where we saw the Doctor like picking an outfit or sorting through outfits, which is something that has become quite maybe a little bit expected with new Doctors. You know, we've had it with 11, we had it with 10, we've had it with 13. Like all of them, you see them picking out what they're going to wear. Now, I do think that we are going to see this Doctor in many, many more costumes than we've ever seen the Doctor wearing before, so perhaps that's going to be a thing we see later on. But yeah, it wasn't a major down. He was brilliant, as I said. I just feel like we needed that one extra moment, that defining moment. Then I do have another down. Not doing so well here. We were doing so great with all the ups, and now we're ending all the downs. Just one more down, and it just was that Ruby's TARDIS reaction just felt a little bit underwhelming. When you're kind of stepping into this new era, I just expected, like, yes, we know that we're going to have that kind of typical, it's bigger on the inside, but we actually didn't have that. She barely said anything. And did she say anything? She just walked around the TARDIS, kind of pulled that shocked face, and then stepped into the TARDIS. There could have just been something more. And on that note, Millie Gibson, I think she has potential to be great. I think the trouble with any new companion is the first story that we are introduced to them in generally has to follow the same sort of structure of, who are you? What is that? What's happening? Aliens exist? It's bigger on the inside. And it takes a few episodes for them to kind of come into themselves and for us to really establish that. And although I think the chemistry is there immediately between her and the Doctor, and the banter and the bickering, as I've said, I'm looking forward to seeing her further down the line, because I think it's going to take a few stories for her to grow on me. I didn't dislike her, but I also didn't love her. I'm definitely gripped by the mystery of who she is and who her mother is. And I think that's going to be a really great story to explore. I'm just, at the moment, slightly indifferent towards her. So I'm looking forward to kind of breaking down those barriers slightly and getting to learn more about the character and who she is without the typical companions of who are you, what's going on. And then obviously, the final up of the episode, I told you we'd come back to her, Mrs. Flood. Mrs. Flood. Who is Mrs. Flood? That was probably the most unexpected part of the entire episode. In hindsight, you don't get Anita Dobson and not give her something more to do than just kind of stand on the doorstep. But again, let the speculation begin. Who is Mrs. Flood? Obviously, there's been plenty of rumours flying around already. I've had countless people suggesting River Song because Flood, River. Personally, I kind of hope that's not the case, just because to me, River Song is Alex Kingston and nobody else will ever be able to play the role any better. But obviously we've had the Rani, there's so many speculations. Obviously, is she Ruby's mum somehow? I'm not going to go into it too much. I will discuss it further with Sean in our spoiler discussion, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But I very much like that we've ended on this mystery. Russell T Davies knows how to hook us in. He ended it on the perfect note. To start with, I was like, oh, she's looking into the camera, she's breaking the fourth wall. I was like, oh, I don't know what's happening here. But actually, I think it worked. I think it was okay. It didn't actually turn out to be true, but my mum said to me, has she got red nails? And I did go back and check. She doesn't have red nails, but the speculation is already flying. Is it the master? Is she the one that picked up the ring? Not the ring, the tooth. But overall, I think it was a pretty decent episode. I wouldn't say it was my favourite Christmas special of all time, but I think it's definitely set me up to be very excited to see where Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson are going in the story. I think it was a great introduction for their characters. I think there's room for improvement and room for them to grow, definitely. I definitely didn't dislike it at all. It was very enjoyable, and I'm very excited to see where the show is going to go in the future. So keep your eyes peeled to the channel in the upcoming week or so, and we'll have some more videos coming out covering it. Obviously it is Christmas, so they might come out slightly later than you would usually expect, but we are trying to cover them as quickly as we can. Just be patient, and I hope you have a brilliant rest of your Christmas week, and I will probably see you in the new year. Merry Christmas!